Hi, my name is Julian. I learned the hardest way that you can do everything right in a marriage and still watch it crumble because you can't control another person's choices. I'd been married to Gabriella for 3.5 years when I discovered her affair. 3.5 years that felt, in retrospect, like a slow unraveling I'd been too busy to notice. We'd met when she was 26 at a mutual friend's engagement party in Boston. She was beautiful, bright, and worked for a marketing agency. I worked for a mid-sized fintech startup. We dated for 1.5 years before I proposed. The wedding was modest but intimate. We agreed to invite only close family and friends. We honeymooned afterwards in Portugal for 2 weeks, exploring coastal towns and eating incredible food, while feeling like we had our whole lives stretching out ahead of us, full of possibility. The first year of marriage was good. We both wanted children eventually, but agreed to wait a few years. Build financial stability first. Get ourselves established so that we won't struggle as parents. I threw myself into work with that goal in mind. The startup was growing fast, which meant long hours and high pressure. I'd leave for the office by 7 most mornings and wouldn't get home until 8 or 9 at night. Some weekends, I'd work from home. Gabriella had initially admired my work ethic. She'd say she was proud of how dedicated I was, how hard I worked. She understood that the sacrifice now meant security later. But somewhere in year 2, that admiration curdled into resentment. She started making comments about how I was never home, how even when I was physically present, I was mentally somewhere else. She felt like she was living alone despite being married. I'd remind her why I was working so hard as I was building stability for us. That once I got promoted to senior engineer, which was coming, I could feel it. I'd be able to scale back, establish better boundaries, be more present. She'd nod, but the frustration was clear in her eyes. The feeling that my promises about the future didn't address her loneliness in the present. Our physical intimacy declined gradually. What had been frequent and natural became sporadic and mechanical. She'd be tired or not in the mood, or I'd be too exhausted from work. We went from several times a week to a few times a month to rarely. I noticed, but didn't worry too much. Relationships went through phases. This was just a rough patch caused by my demanding work schedule. Once things settled, we'd reconnect. Conversations became surface level. She'd tell me about her day at work, and I'd half listen while mentally battling what task I have next. I'd talk about my projects and watch her eyes glaze over with disinterest. We occupied the same space, but existed in separate worlds. Still, I told myself we were fine. Marriage required work and patience. We were in a difficult season, but we would come out stronger on the other side. I believed that so completely that I missed all the signs of what was actually happening. One Saturday morning, Gabriella had gone to the gym. She'd been going regularly for the past several months, sometimes early morning sessions, sometimes after work. I was home catching up on laundry and tidying the apartment. I went to our bedroom closet to put away some of Gabriella's clean clothes. Her side of the closet was more organized than mine, everything arranged carefully. I was placing folded shirts on her shelf when I knocked over a small cosmetics pouch that had been sitting near the back. The pouch fell open and several items spilled out. Lipstick, mascara, and a compact mirror. And a blister pack of morning after pills. I stood there staring at it because I recognized what it was immediately. After some seconds, I picked it up and looked at the packaging. Checked the manufacturing date. It had been produced recently, within the past few months. A couple of pills were missing from the pack. My mind went blank because Gabriella and I had discussed this years ago when we'd first started dating. She'd had a bad reaction to them once before we met. Severe nausea, cramping, hormonal disruption. We'd agreed together that we wouldn't rely on them as birth control because of the side effects. We used other methods instead. And besides, we hadn't been intimate in over 2 months. There was absolutely no reason for her to have these pills. No legitimate reason for them to be hidden in her cosmetics pouch in the back of our closet. The only explanation that made sense was the one I didn't want to consider. She'd had sex with someone else. needed emergency contraception, and hid the rest of it. I stood in our closet, holding this blister pack. Everything I believed about our marriage, about who Gabriella was, about what we were building together. All of it suddenly uncertain. A part of me wanted to confront her immediately, demand an explanation, force her to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. But another part told me to verify first, to be certain before I acted. Because if I was wrong, if there was some innocent explanation I couldn't imagine, confronting her with an accusation would irreparably damage our relationship. So I put the morning after pills back in the cosmetics pouch, arranged everything exactly as it had been, finished putting away the laundry, forced myself to act normal when Gabriella came home from the gym, sweaty and cheerful, telling me about her workout. Over the next few days, I became someone I'd never been before, suspicious and secretive. I waited for moments when Gabriella was in the shower or had left her phone charging while she was in another room. Would pick it up, unlock it. I'd known her passcode for years. We'd never hidden our phones from each other, and check her messages. Most of the conversations were mundane. Work discussions, plans with friends, messages with her mother. But there were gaps. Deleted conversations between her and her best friend. Her message history with several contacts had been completely cleared, which was unusual. Gabriella wasn't the type to regularly delete messages. I found one exchange that hadn't been fully scrubbed. Messages with someone saved in her phone as just initials, DM. The conversation had been mostly deleted, but a few recent messages remained. From her, thanks for this morning. Needed that. From DM, always happy to help you work up a sweat. Winky face. From her, stop. You're going to get us caught. From DM, relax. No one pays attention at the gym. The gym? I asked myself. The place she'd been going so regularly for months. I checked her gym's website. Looked at the staff page. Found a guy with such initials. He's a personal trainer and group fitness instructor. There it was. The confirmation I'd been looking for and desperately hoping I wouldn't find. My wife was having an affair with her gym instructor. I put her phone back where she'd left it. Over the next couple of days, I existed in this strange dual reality. On the surface, I maintained normalcy. Went to work, came home, had surface-level conversations with Gabriella. She didn't notice anything was different because she wasn't paying enough attention to notice. But internally, I was processing everything, replaying our marriage from the beginning, seeing patterns I'd missed. Her gradual withdrawal, her increasing frustration with my work schedule, and her new interest in fitness and appearance. The late evenings she'd started spending out, the weekend mornings at the gym, the times she'd been distant and distracted. I'd been blind, or willfully ignorant. Too focused on my career and our theoretical future to notice what was happening in our actual present. Part of me wanted to confront her, to demand explanations, to hear her try to justify what she'd done. But I knew how that would go. She will initially lie, claim the evidence meant nothing. Then, when confronted with undeniable proof, she'd admit it but minimize it. She'd cry and say she was lonely, that I'd pushed her away with my absence, that it was a mistake and meant nothing. She'd manipulate the situation until somehow I felt responsible for her betrayal, until I was the one apologizing for working too much, for not being present enough, for failing as a husband. And I'd probably forgive her because I loved her. We'd made vows, and 3.5 years felt like too much to throw away. We'd try to rebuild, go to counseling. I'd work less, be more present. She'd promise it would never happen again. And maybe it wouldn't. Or maybe it would, just more carefully hidden next time. But the trust would be gone. I'd always wonder where she really was, who she was really texting. Every time she went to the gym or had a late evening, I'd be suspicious. We'd limp along in a broken marriage, held together by obligation and fear of starting over. That future felt worse than the alternative. So I made a different choice. I decided to leave with finality, to walk away completely rather than stay and slowly poison myself with resentment and suspicion. I consulted with a female divorce attorney I connected with online, booked an appointment, and explained the situation to her. The attorney laid out the process. Massachusetts allowed for no-fault divorce, which meant I didn't need to prove adultery in court, even though I could swear she was having one. We'd file papers, establish a separation period, negotiate asset division, and finalize everything within several months if Gabriella cooperated. I asked the attorney to prepare the paperwork. I wanted everything ready before I made my move. During the next 3 weeks, I quietly organized my life for departure. I tendered my resignation at the company I work for without my wife knowing, opened a new bank account at a different institution, and slowly transferred money from our joint account to my new individual one. Not everything that would be noticed, just enough to establish financial independence. Started moving some of my belongings out gradually. A few boxes of books and clothes to a storage unit I'd rented. Nothing Gabriella would notice missing, but enough that I wouldn't have to come back for multiple trips. I applied for remote contract positions with companies in other cities. I'd built a strong reputation as a software engineer. Finding contract work wasn't as difficult as it would have been if I were a rookie. Even if I don't get any offers, my savings would keep me comfortable for months. I researched apartments in places far enough from Boston to feel like a complete reset, but still a city with good tech opportunities if I wanted to settle there permanently. Found a small one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. Began the process of signing the lease. I constructed this exit strategy without Gabriella's knowledge. I didn't want her to track me easily if she decides to. I refuse to stay with any mutual friends while I get a job and an apartment. I didn't want to be found until I was ready. Maybe never. The morning I left, Gabriella went to work early at her agency and wouldn't be home until evening. After she left, I moved quickly. I packed my remaining belongings into my car. Left most of the furniture, the kitchen stuff, all the shared possessions we'd accumulated. I didn't want anything that would remind me of the marriage. The divorce papers were the only thing that had kept me in this house longer than I should have. I left them on Gabriella's dresser in our bedroom. Placed my wedding ring on top of the papers. I didn't leave a note. The papers said everything that needed to be said. I did one final walk through the apartment we'd shared and felt nothing but numbness. I locked the door behind me, dropped my key in the mailbox, got in my car and drove west. I'd mapped out a route that seemed comforting, stayed in budget motels, paid cash when I could, disconnected my old phone, and activated a new one with a new number. Deleted all my social media accounts while sitting in a motel room in Ohio. By the time I arrived in Portland, I'd effectively erased myself from my old life. The apartment I'd rented was small and mostly empty. I'd shipped some boxes ahead, but didn't have much furniture. I bought a mattress and some basics, set up my laptop in the bedroom, and started the remote contract work I was able to get. I fell into a routine that was simultaneously new and familiar. Work during the day, explore the city in the evenings, and on weekends. I built a life that was entirely my own, with no connections to my past. I had no idea how Gabriella had reacted to finding the divorce papers, whether she'd been shocked or relieved. Whether she tried to call my disconnected number or shown up at my work only to be told I'd resigned. Whether she'd cried or been angry or simply moved on with her new man. I'd left no way for her to reach me, no trail to follow. My attorney was handling all communication through official legal channels. Gabriella's attorney could contact my attorney, but Gabriella herself had no way to contact me directly. Strangely, not knowing was better. If I'd stayed and confronted her, I'd have had to hear her explanations and excuses and attempts at justification. Would have had to watch her cry and claim she still loved me while asking how she could do this if she loved me. This way, there was just a clean separation. The marriage had ended. We were getting divorced. Everything else was irrelevant. The first few months were the hardest. Not because I missed Gabriella specifically, but because I missed the idea of what I thought we had. The future I'd been working toward had evaporated. I went through phases. Anger at her betrayal. Anger at myself for missing the signs. Sadness for the time I'd wasted. Relief at having escaped. Numbness when the emotions became too much. Slowly, I started feeling more human again. The routine helped. Work provided structure and purpose. Exploring my new environment gave me something to do besides dwell on what had happened. I wasn't interested in dating or relationships. The thought of trusting someone again, of being vulnerable, felt impossible. I'd given Gabriella everything, and she'd betrayed all of it. Why would I risk that again? But I was fine being alone. Better than fine, actually. There was freedom in solitude. No one to disappoint with my work schedule. No one to resent my career or ambitions. No one to lie to or hide from. The divorce was finalized about 8 months after I'd left. My attorney handled everything remotely. Asset division was straightforward. We split our joint savings. I kept my car and retirement accounts. Gabriella kept hers. No house to fight over since we'd been renting. No children to complicate custody. The day it became official, Michelle sent me a message. Divorce decree signed. You're legally single again. Hope you're doing well, wherever you are. I felt a sense of closure. That chapter was finished. I could move forward completely now. Over the next several months, life continued settling into its new normal. My contract work turned into a full-time remote position with a different company. I liked Portland and decided to stay. I made a few friends through my exploration. Nothing deep, but enough casual social connections to keep from becoming completely isolated. I started going to therapy. Talking through what had happened with someone objective helped process feelings I'd been carrying. The therapist helped me understand patterns I'd fallen into. How I'd used work as an escape even before the affair, how I'd ignored problems in my marriage rather than addressing them, and how I needed to find balance if I ever wanted a healthy relationship again. I wasn't sure I wanted that, but I appreciated understanding myself better regardless. Then, about 2 years after I'd left Boston, I reconnected with a mutual friend from back in Massachusetts. Someone I'd known through Gabriella initially, but had become friendly with independently. During the course of our interaction, I'd specifically asked him to keep my whereabouts confidential if anyone ever asked. Apparently, keeping secrets wasn't his strong suit. A few months after reconnecting with this mutual friend, there was a knock on my apartment door on a Saturday afternoon. I opened it and found Gabriella standing there. She looked different, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater. We stood there looking at each other for a long moment. I felt surprisingly calm, with no anger or hurt rushing back. Just this quiet assessment of the stranger at my door who used to be my wife. She asked if we could talk. Her voice was soft, almost tentative. I considered saying no, closing the door, and maintaining the boundary I'd established by leaving. But curiosity won out. I wanted to know what she'd come all this way to say. I stepped aside and let her in. My apartment was small and sparsely furnished. She looked around, taking it in. Sat on the couch when I gestured to it. I sat in the chair across from her, maintaining distance. She started talking. Admitted the affair had started because she'd been lonely and frustrated with my absence. She claimed her affair partner had paid attention to her, made her feel attractive and wanted. It had begun as a flirtation, escalated to emotional intimacy, and eventually became physical. She told me she'd ended it after I'd left, adding that her affair partner had wanted to make things official, to actually date her properly. But being with him openly made her realize it had never been about him specifically. It had been about feeling neglected and seeking validation anywhere she could find it. She'd been in therapy since the divorce, was working on understanding why she'd made the choices she made, why she destroyed something good instead of communicating about problems that could have been fixed. She said I hadn't deserved what she'd done, that her loneliness didn't excuse her betrayal, that she'd been weak and selfish, and had hurt someone who'd been working hard to build a future for both of them. She apologized and directly acknowledged the damage she'd caused. Then she said she changed, grown, learned from her mistakes. And she wanted to know if there was any possibility of trying again, starting over, and building something better than what we'd had before. I listened to all of this calmly. watched her face, heard the sincerity in her voice, recognized that she probably did mean everything she was saying, and felt absolutely nothing. The man she'd been married to no longer existed. He'd died somewhere on that 3-day drive west when I'd shed my old life like a snake shed skin. I thanked her for the apology, told her it took courage to come here, to admit everything, to take responsibility. Then I told her I'd found peace in my new life, that I'd forgiven her genuinely, because holding on to anger was poisonous. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. I'd moved on and learned to enjoy solitude. And that life doesn't include her anymore. Tears ran down her face. She'd come here hoping for something I couldn't give her. She asked if I was sure, if I'd really give up on everything we'd built together. I pointed out that she'd already given up on it. I'd just been the one to finalize what she'd set in motion. She asked if we could stay in touch, if maybe friendship was possible. I told her honestly that I didn't think so. Not because I hated her, but because I needed a clean separation to fully move forward. Staying connected would just keep me tied to a past I'd worked hard to leave behind. She accepted that, nodded through her tears, said she understood. Before she left, she asked if I was happy. I thought about it and told her I was content. Maybe not happy in some ecstatic way, but content. I no longer worked myself to exhaustion for some future that might never come. Just living in the present and finding satisfaction in simple things. She said she was glad, that she hoped I would find someone who deserved me. I didn't tell her I wasn't looking. That seemed unnecessarily cruel. She left. I closed the door behind her. I never heard from her again. Don't know if she moved on, found someone new, stayed in Boston, or relocated somewhere else. And I'm okay with not knowing. The affair had ended my marriage, but my response to it had given me something unexpected. Complete freedom to rebuild my life on my own terms. Looking back, I understand so much more clearly what went wrong. I'd used work as an excuse to avoid actually being present in my marriage. Told myself I was building a future while ignoring the present. Gabriella had been lonely and sought connection elsewhere. We'd both failed. Her failure was more dramatic, an actual betrayal of vows, but I'd failed too in my own quieter way. But I also understand that recognizing my failures doesn't excuse her betrayal. Both things can be true. I could have been a better husband, and she still chose to cheat rather than communicate or leave honorably. The morning after pills hidden in her closet, the deleted messages, and the lies by omission were choices she made that had nothing to do with my work schedule. And my choice to leave quietly rather than confront her, that was self-preservation. Taking control of the situation by removing myself from it entirely. Some people might call that cowardly. Running away instead of fighting for the marriage. But I call it wisdom. Recognizing that some things can't be fixed and shouldn't be. That sometimes the healthiest choice is to walk away completely. The divorce cost me 3.5 years of my life. Some money in the settlement. The future I'd imagined. But it gave me something more valuable. A clean slate. The chance to rebuild without the weight of betrayal and broken trust. The freedom to become someone better than who I'd been. She'd said she'd changed. Maybe she had. People can grow and learn from their mistakes. But her growth didn't obligate me to give her another chance. Forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. I could wish her well while still maintaining my boundary. That's what I learned most clearly. Boundaries aren't cruel. They're necessary as the foundation of self-respect. I'd forgiven Gabriella for the affair, had processed the anger, hurt, and betrayal until they no longer controlled me. But forgiveness didn't erase memory, didn't rebuild trust that had been shattered, didn't create an obligation to let her back into my life. I'd moved on because sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for the other person is to let go. That's not running away. That's choosing peace. And I've never regretted it.